before I decide to watch a movie, I'll peruse Rotten Tomatoes. And as long as it's considered fresh by their standards, their criteria of 60% or more positive reviews from critics, I'll give it a shot, or I'll at least consider it. But sometimes there's movies that I just want to see regardless of their ratings, or there were movies I watched before Rotten Tomatoes even existed and enjoyed, before even knowing the aggregate critical score, and that's what I call my guilty pleasure movies. These aren't the so bad they're good, kind of like The Room. These are movies that, despite their poor critical acclaim, I personally enjoy and encourage other people to watch. So here are 3 guilty pleasure comedies. I was surprised that Ace Ventura Pet Detective wasn't certified fresh. And I've watched it again, and it became clear why, especially as I'm older than I was when it came out, of course. I was 8 or 9, and it's extremely goofy, and it centers around physical comedy. This isn't a highbrow comedy, and honestly, they're not jokes so much as gags when you really think about it. And I get it, Jim Carrey isn't for everyone, but he is for me. He seems to have this kind of original take on comedy that's definitely from the Jerry Lee Lewis school, maybe Steve Martin, and even back further, the Three Stooges. But this is a quintessential Jim Carrey, and really it was a starring role. You know, I think you can give credit to Carrey here because I don't think this movie's funny without him. His mannerisms, his body contorting energy and cadence are really everything to the Ace Ventura character and the humor in this one. And, you know, additionally, there's kind of a worthy twist in the mystery of the movie as well, a whodunit. So, furthermore, I think that this movie should be kept in context because that twist is actually something that I don't think would be accepted in a movie today. So the context of the 90s is important, but I still think that this is really a good movie to watch to see the influence that Jim Carrey had on the comedy genre in the 90s. Ghostbusters II, I think, gets a bad rap. Because of the massive success and quality of the first film, it can't possibly measure up and meet the expectations. I mean, I think Ghostbusters, the original, is considered some people's favorite comedy of all time. It's definitely one of my favorites of all time. But that doesn't mean that the second Ghostbusters isn't a good film. In fact, now that they've had a reboot and it didn't do very well, I should say a remake, I don't know, the all-female cast one, and then there's even another one, Afterlife, which is kind of a continuation, which I think is a little bit better. I think Ghostbusters 2 looks even better in comparison to those two films. So I think one of my favorite parts of this is that, you know, there's really no denying that Peter McNichol is hilarious as Janosch. And then the roadwork scene, maybe one of my favorites among the entire series. And even the kind of overall theme of the movie of uniting the city against evil is strong. It's true that it may be geared towards kids after the success of the cartoon, The Real Ghostbusters, but there is enough in there for adults to enjoy. And I mean, I still like it today. And I think this is less of a guilty pleasure movie and just kind of more of a critically underappreciated film. The last one is Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back. Assuming you've seen all the other Kevin Smith movies up to this point, Jay and Silent Bob Strike Back has a lot to offer. Character and situational references are like, you know, Easter eggs, and they're hidden about throughout the entire film, returning characters, and I think they're pretty clever. And then that's all with the stoner humor as well. So if you haven't seen the other Kevin Smith films, you know, you're probably just left with the stoner jokes, and they're not necessarily, if you don't care for stoner jokes, you're not going to like this movie. But it's a guilty pleasure film at its most guilty. The meta references differentiate it from a lot of the other films in the genre, at least at the time. There's been a lot more that's come out, but I think this movie's hilarious, and it's one of my favorite Kevin Smiths.
The real Jay and Silent Bob.